Hope everyone's having an amazing, wonderful day now with your full smiles. Welcome to the shit show. Today, we're going to be talking about why Warlock is the best class in D&D. What? What an outrageous claim. What? Well, hold on. Hold on there, traveler. Let me explain. I will be talking about why Warlock is the best class. D&D 2024. D&D 5.5. D&D 6th edition, 1D&D, whatever the fuck we're calling it. It's still kind of weird because I feel like people don't really call it 2024. So, but you know, the updated one. And I'm going to be giving you guys a few reasons as to why I think this. So let's start off with one of the biggest reasons that I think the Warlock is the number one, the best, undoubtedly, class in D&D. There are a lot of powerful classes in Dungeons and Dragons, and a lot of classes with unique abilities and flavors. However, there are no classes that have the customizability of the Warlock. The Warlock, especially with how it has been translated to 2024, is so insanely customizable, especially compared to other classes, that I feel like actually lost a lot of their customizability. A prime example of this being the cleric and the druid, because now cleric and druid are almost just mimics of each other, except one gets god stuff and the other gets nature. They are so similar now. Like, you can just look at it and the way they level up, and if you want to go like the more martial route or the more spellcaster route, they're both spell-based, like wisdom-based classes that use a d8 hit die. They get almost the exact same armor proficiencies. Like, huh? Or even things like with the wizard now, just solely kind of focusing on schools of magic and being like having to choose those schools. While it's cool and powerful, it almost limits you and like that customizability. And I know that's a hot take, but you know, the Warlock now has changed so that you're literally able from the get-go, from level 1, to choose how you want to start your path. And then the cool thing is you can change that as you go on. So you get to choose your pact instead of your subclass now at level 1, which I thought I hated at first, but now I'm actually really starting to kind of like. But you can choose Pact of the Blade, Pact of the Tome, or Pact of the Chain right off the get-go, and that really allows you to have a strong sense of personality to your Warlock, because at level 1 you can have 2 Warlocks, one's Pact of the Chain and one's Pact of the Tome, and they play completely differently. Like, it's not, sure, right, they can both have Eldritch Blast or other cantrips, but now even with things like Eldritch Blast, you can have the ability Agonizing Blast, which is what made Eldritch Blast so good, and you can put that on other cantrips. So it just gives even Warlocks even more options to be able to open themselves up. And you know, honestly, you can't beat it. There is not another class in D&D that is as customizable as Warlock from a mechanical standpoint, in the amount of options and when you get the options, especially at low levels specifically. You can argue that when the bard gets to level 10 and they can pick from 3 spell lists, sure, whatever, but how many people are starting a campaign at level 10 and getting that right from the get-go? They're getting that customizability. Like, I love the bard, but unfortunately I also love dealing damage, and that's one of the main reasons I never play bard when I do get to play, is because I'm sitting there and I'm like, well, I love the bard, I love being able to be a performer and all this kind of stuff, but I can still have all of these charisma-based abilities and be able to do damage and even use a sword if I wanted to be like a swords bard as a Warlock. And I can do that at level 1 instead of level 3 if I wanted to use a weapon. It's crazy. It's crazy. It's literally crazy. And speaking of casting spells and being a blade lock and all that other kind of stuff, the other biggest thing that I really wanted to talk about is how Warlock spellcasting works, and because it is so unique. And I'm not talking about the fact that if it's mechanically worse or better in this sense, but I'm talking about it's the best because it's so unique and it's so different. And that's what makes it stand out. When you're going through all of these classes and you're like, oh, this does this and this does this, and you cast spells, But then you get to Warlock, and they have an entirely different way of which they do magic and cast spells. And to me, as a player, that's so fascinating. And I'm like, wow, this really stands out because it's different in a line of like a sea of spellcasters, because you're looking at something all the same, and then obviously, you know, you got the pink pineapple floating in the ocean and you're like, whoa, I want that one. You know what I'm saying, guys? Like, oh man, it's yeah. I think the uniqueness as well makes people gravitate towards it, but something else that makes people gravitate towards Warlock is the narrative hooks that are built into the class. So these hooks offer a plethora of possibilities, and they don't necessarily limit you, but by picking a patron or picking a certain pact, you are enabling plot hooks naturally just by way of choosing your class. And while you can argue that this is still true for, you know, a stereotypical cleric or what's another good one? I think cleric is probably the best example, or a paladin. Actually, a paladin is a great example, because paladins have their oaths and clerics worship a deity. Those don't give you like a hook, right? You can craft them into a hook, but with Warlock it comes so easy. And Warlocks are also generally kind of like, it's easier to see Warlocks as bad and still have them be good. And I think that's how a lot of people also like to play D&D. They want to look like the bad guy, but feel like the good guy. I don't know. Let me know if I'm wrong on that one. Let me know if I'm wrong. I feel like I'm right though. But having a patron as well, this is highly DM dependent. But a lot of DMs will have a close personal relationship with the Warlock and their patron, and because patrons are less powerful than deities and gods and that kind of stuff, the things that a cleric or paladin sometimes may be into, it allows for like further growth and development of that relationship. And I think that's really cool. I'm personally a DM that if I have a Warlock in my campaign, ooh, sorry, your patron might be a little too involved in your life, unfortunately. Unfortunately. So yeah, I think that's another reason why it is just really great, because it is so different comparatively, and of that narrative hook that really lets players sink their teeth into. And it's also really easy for new players to be able to understand, to be like, oh, well, I made a pact with this entity, but I want to get out of it, or I want to find a way to eventually take down this entity. I don't like them, or I want to, whatever it is. Like, it's a really great class for new players to help them also develop a backstory and develop relationships and teach them how to roleplay, because it's already right there. It's right there in front of you. It's so juicy. You can just squeeze it. Squeezy. But something else I do want to talk about as well that really helps elevate the Warlock is that it is a charisma-based caster. And while it would be great if you had access to intelligence or wisdom as a Warlock, charisma is like, other than maybe perception, it's what's widely used, you know, the most, especially out of combat, for out of combat things. I'll clarify that. For out of combat, other than perception, is probably the most used skill set in the game. Your base attributes are tied to charisma, meaning you already have that there. So you can be a face of a party. You don't have to be, but you easily have that option. It's not something you even have to build around. It can just happen naturally because you have that charisma. You have that riz, baby. You have that riz. And that's something a lot of charisma casters definitely hold over the wisdom-based and intelligence-based casters in the game, because charisma, while mechanically all the stats do the same, in actuality, when you're role-playing or sitting at the table, you're using those charisma stats a lot, especially in a heavily based roleplay game, which makes Warlocks really good in combat and also social situations, because if you... This can be a downside, all right, a little bit, but if you know how to build a Warlock, balls to the walls busted. You can make Warlocks so disgustingly, depravedly good. All right. However, because with that customizability comes some limitations. So while Warlocks have a lot of great story elements for new players, sometimes their customizability can be a little bit difficult. If you are trying to build a Warlock that is incredibly strong and has a very strong sense of like, this is what they're here to do, this is what they want to do, and this is the thing they're good at, you can also kind of make them a jack of all trades. So that can be a positive or a negative, really, depending on how you look at it. Honestly, Warlocks have everything. No other class has that. They have bits and pieces, but not in the way that Warlocks have it, because of the customizability of how you build them. Because they are the best multi-class dip in the game for most people. Other than maybe one level of fighter, it's Warlocks. So, that's all I gotta say on that. Warlocks are the best class in the game. Hot take. So, yeah, as of 2024. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. Please make sure to hit subscribe and let me know what you think in the comments below. What do you think the best class in the game is? Come on, tell me. I want to know. I want to know. Anyway, see y'all later. Ashling and Chadlings are ass blasting out. Bye-nie.